The Kansas City Chiefs make their playoff push. Today we'll be discussing the wide receiving core and the mystery on why Skyy Moore is not seeing enough snaps and not getting enough touches with the football. And last week, I saw something very, very interesting on the defensive side of the ball that excited me and definitely towards this playoff run that I want to discuss about. But before we do get into all of that, please be sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video, as I'm going to keep you up to date on anything Kansas City Chief related that you do not want to miss out on. And without further ado, let's have some fun. So for you Chiefs Kingdom fans who are regulars to this channel, and you know I focus on the wide receiving core in heavy, you know I am a huge, and I mean huge, Skyy Moore advocate. I'm one of his biggest fans. I loved his tape coming out of college, and I thought he'd be a perfect fit in this scheme. And I still think he is. So today what we're going to do, I'm not just going to focus on Skyy Moore and the nonsense why he's not touching the ball on the offense side of the ball. We're going to focus on every single wide receiver in this group, and I'm basically going to break it down on how I view basically who should be wide receiver number 1 all the way to wide receiver number 5 in my dream reality on who I think should be touching the ball. And of course, we're going to be talking about Skyy Moore. We're going to be talking about Kadarius Toney. We're going to be talking about Mecole Hardman coming back. And we're going to be talking about basically our wide receiver number 2 in Justin Watson, and just try to make sense on everything that's going in this wide receiving group. But first off, we're going to start with wide receiver number 1, and it's not no question. It is Juju. And before we do go into Juju, I want to say for everyone who has been impatient throughout this year or wanted to see more production out of this wide receiving core, I think give it what it's worth. This is their first year where this whole core is together. The only basically experience and who knows the system like that was Mecole Hardman. And he's basically missed not majority of the year, but a good portion of the year. So this took time for this team to gel together and try to make the most of what it is. And it also helps when you have a quarterback, the MVP of the league in Patrick Mahomes, to make sure this all works. And Juju, for his first year, a bounce back year, trying to redeem himself and show he is still one of the top 15 receivers in this league. And I think he is proving it. I think he did a very solid job in year 1, and he still has 2 games to go to get over 1,000 yards. And I just beg the Kansas City Chiefs to sign this man to a long-term contract. When I mean long-term, 3, maybe 4-year contract, and make sure he's in Kansas City during his prime. Year 1 looks really good. Like I mentioned, he is almost on pace. Well, he is on pace for 1,000 yards. Give it what it takes these next 2 games. I hope he hits it. I think he will. The only underwhelming part with Juju is the touchdowns. And it's actually the touchdowns throughout this whole wide receiving core, which you hope picks up during this playoff push and going into next year. But again, this is year 1, so the production looks very, very solid in my eyes. But with Juju, I think he brings a difference. Now, a lot of people are going to compare him to Tyreek because Tyreek was a generational talent. He was Kansas City's number 1 wide receiver for the better part of 5 to 6 years. Not fair to compare Juju to Tyreek because they are not the same wide receivers. But Juju brings a dimension to the game that Tyreek couldn't as well. Now, I know a lot of people want that generational speed, that generational elusiveness where no one can catch the cheetah. Understand. But the physicality that Juju brings to the game is bar none. The hands he brings to the game is bar none. He is one of the best consistent catchers on this team, maybe in this league too. I love having Juju on this team, and I'm hoping Kansas City can secure him. So he is definitely wide receiver number 1. Will he be wide receiver number 1 going into the future? Time will tell, because free agency is going to be crazy. The draft's going to be crazy. It just depends on what the Kansas City Chiefs basically wire down and want to focus on. Could it be wide receiver? It most definitely can be. But right now, I wouldn't be too upset in the better half of the future if Juju is wide receiver number 1. Now, here's where it gets very, very interesting, is wide receiver number 2. And that has been the question with the Kansas City Chiefs, again, for the better half of 6 years. Because, of course, you can give it 1A, 1B, and that might have been the thing this year too. I don't want to call Juju 1B, but he's missed games and he's had production, so he was definitely receiving option number 2. But when you have Travis Kelce and then you have Tyreek Hill, or Travis Kelce and Juju, that's basically wide receiver number 1 and wide receiver number 2. But when you focus on this position just in depth and in general, it's still a struggle on who to find wide receiver number 2 is. And this is where Chiefs Kingdom causes chaos and havoc. And I am with you because they're playing basically someone who is a wide receiver number 2, well, a wide receiver number 5 in a wide receiver number 2 spot. And that is Justin Watson. Now, give it what it takes. I do believe Justin Watson is an excellent wide receiver number 5, given maybe wide receiver number 6. But no way in hell he should be getting wide receiver number 2 snaps. I think the talent on this team and maybe going into the future, and maybe the injury to McCole Hardman might have messed that up a little bit as well. But guys like Kadarius Toney, which he still got time to learn the scheme, and maybe that's why his snaps aren't crazy, or even a Skyy Moore. I believe the potential in a Skyy Moore can be a wide receiver number 2 in this team. And think about it, I'm not talking about like outside, because I know a lot of people don't see him in that position. I do, but we all know where he can basically cause havoc and excel in this league is in the slot, because that's what he did in college, and his route running is what's going to make him one of the great receivers if he gets the chance in this league. And one thing that kind of blew my mind was when I was looking at the stats comparing Justin Watson and this Skyy Moore, because it just seems like we haven't seen too much of Skyy Moore, but their stats are very similar. The only thing that is very different is the snaps and I don't want to say production, but snaps. Let's just keep it at that. Like, their yardage is very the same. The only thing that's different is Justin Watson has 2 touchdowns, which that wasn't since like week 3 or 4 when we seen those deep bombs. As for that, it's been eliminated. Now, has Kansas City tried to connect on those? Yeah, we saw it last week. It was a mishap. Now, give it for what it's worth. Woolen, he had remarkable recovery speed and got in position. And also, too, there was that magnificent, beautiful throw that Mahomes made from the end zone all the way to, it was like a 60-yard pass, and Watson just got out of position. And now people are like, well, Skyy Moore would have been gone. I'm not going to give that for what it's worth, too, because if Skyy Moore was in that position, he may have came down with the catch. I don't believe he's getting a 99-yard touchdown. And that goes for MVS. That goes for Kadarius Toney. Just because the way the ball was, it was a beautiful throw, but was it put in perfect position for Justin Watson to score? I don't know. Because he had to get, basically, not flip his body, but basically stretch for that. And when you have to stretch, you're basically diving and falling. But at the end of the day, Justin Watson should have made a catch. But at the end of the day, I don't think Justin Watson should have been in that position. And that's why I'm thinking, if Kansas City is looking for deep threats, is Justin Watson really the guy you want there? Again, he's got speed, but the hands have been very inconsistent. And then when you look at your other deep threat in MVS, basically the same thing. Maybe he's a tier 1 better than Justin Watson, but MVS makes some of the most ridiculous, magnificent catches you will ever see. But when he is wide open and when it is simple, he will drop that football. And it's inconsistent. The same thing Justin Watson does. And maybe this is where the Kansas City Chiefs miss McCole Hardman. I know they miss McCole in the red zone, but we saw a little bit of what Kadarius Toney can do in the red zone, so you expect that production to jump up. But you missed McCole Hardman, the Jet, his speed maybe. Now, we haven't really seen those kind of touchdown plays from McCole going back to his rookie year. He did it against the Tennessee Titans. When he gets open and he can be sure-handed in the catch, he can be a legit threat. And Chiefs Kingdom, I know they weren't the biggest fan of McCole Hardman. They didn't want him back on this team next year because he wasn't worth the money. And it's crazy what time can do, because now look at him. He basically misses a portion of the year, and you see this offense drop, and they're like, damn, we might need his speed. And I could see the Kansas City Chiefs signing him back, and it'll just be, what kind of deal do you want? Because now you're putting in a position where you got to bring Juju back, that's for sure. I think you got to bring McCole Hardman back, that's for sure. I know a lot of people are like, does Kadarius Toney outweigh McCole Hardman? I think you need both of them. I think you need the elusiveness in Kadarius Toney, and you need the speed in McCole Hardman. And it's going to be hard to guard this offense in the future. But if I had to go in my dream position for a wide receiver number 2 in the slot, I think you really develop Skyy Moore and see what he has. And Coach Reed even preached on it a little bit, is he loves the way Skyy Moore has grasped this offense and how he's grasped this playbook, and he has learned really quickly. Well, please show us. Put him on the field more. Put him in the positions that Justin Watson is in this too, because They both basically had the same amount of time to learn the playbook. Watson may have had a couple months, but at the end of the day, if it's that and he has basically shown improvements, put him on the field and let's show Chiefs Kingdom what he's all about. And Chiefs Kingdom, you guys just seem bitter with Skyy Moore and you say he's a bust because you focus on his punt returns. I will say it time in and time out. That was coaching's fault. They should have never put Skyy Moore in that position in the first place because he's never done it in his career. So I'm not going to slight him on that, and I'm not going to hold him on that as well. Skyy Moore is a receiver, and I believe he can be great in this league. And I think going on in the future, maybe we'll see more of it at the end of this year and hopefully in the playoffs, but I really believe if it became wide receiver number 2 or wide receiver number 3, because you're going to include Travis Kelce, I think Skyy Moore needs to be considered more heavily. And then that's where you get into your wide receiver number 3, where it's going to be basically a duo. I think it's going to be between Kadarius Toney and Mecole Hardman. That's going to be where all your red zone production comes in. That's going to be where your deep threat comes in. And that's going to be basically when you got 3rd and short, 4th and short. You give it to those boys and you let them make a play. We saw it last week. Kadarius Toney can do it, and Mecole Hardman can do it. I believe hopefully Hardman gets healthy. That was another report, was he's been practicing all week. It looks like he's going to come off injured reserve, and then out of nowhere he didn't practice today. Hopefully it wasn't a setback, but if it is, let's hope he gets right for the playoffs, and let's show that the Jet needs to be on this team. But I believe that speed is second to none. I believe that elusiveness is second to none, and I believe it keeps the defense on their toes, and I believe you need both guys. It's very helpful that you got Kadarius Toney on a rookie deal. If you can get Mecole Hardman to sign a 2-year, maybe 3-year contract, and maybe rich, maybe 13, maybe 15 million. I don't know. I might be out of my way. But last year we saw these wide receivers break the bank. And I don't expect it to be any different this offseason as well. But if you go into next year with Juju under contract, Skyy Moore under a rookie contract, Kadarius Toney under a rookie contract, and you bring the Jet back under a deal, I really like that. And then you can add another veteran presence, and that's where I'm going to get to. I'm very iffy. Of course, Justin Watson, I think, is going to be on this team, but I think he's going to be on this team solely because he did have early production. I don't want to see it really anymore. I want to see someone take his place and produce and step up and take it forward, because he shouldn't be getting wide receiver number 2 snaps. He's a very, very solid wide receiver number 5 or 6. But when you put him in wide receiver number 2, it shows that it's just not his capacity or what he's able to do, basically grasp that whole playbook and go full in depth. I get it, I understand, but I just don't think he should be there. And I believe a lot of Chiefs Kingdom agrees with me that they'd like to see someone else in that position. And that goes the same for MVS. I would just love to see MVS just take off and go. But at the end of the day, MVS did sign a 3-year deal, but the Kansas City Chiefs can opt out of that after this year too. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how they go this offseason with that. I know there's a lot of big MVS fans. I'm one of them too, but the inconsistency really hurts me, because I thought, and if you guys are really regulars, you know, I thought he could have had the chance to basically get close to Juju numbers this year. I mean, he is basically up there. He has over 600 yards. Juju has over almost 900, but Juju missed games, so Juju could easily be over 1,000. And I just felt MVS, during the time that Juju was out, he could have took off and basically showed, hey, I could be a legit target in this league. And it just shows back to the Green Bay days as inconsistency. And I don't know if Kansas City needs that on their team in the future. Again, it could sound like I'm going against MVS. I do love him. I just want to see more consistency, because he is an athletic, and I mean an athletic freak. And if he could put his tools all together, he will be a special weapon in this league. It's just we're waiting to see it all get tied together. So that's basically how I have this wide receiving core wrapped up, with the 2 big questions being Justin Watson and MVS. And at the end of the day, they're the ones getting the most snaps at wide receiver number 2. I think you start transitioning in another way, and maybe they do with Skyy Moore or even Kadarius Toney at number 2. He looks fully healthy. Let's see how much he grasps this playbook, and when Mecole Hardman comes back fully healthy, maybe things start changing in the playoffs. Only time will tell. But also, one thing I got from looking at these stats, and I want to preach on Patrick Mahomes himself, the MVP, and what people aren't really realizing what he's doing this year with a whole new group, a young core, is when I was looking at all these numbers is this dude is gonna probably, if he does not, he'll get close to eclipsing the all-time record with passing yards. And none of these wide receivers have yet to eclipse 1,000 yards. Let that sink in. That's absurd. That's ridiculous. Yes, Travis Kelce has done it. He's over 1,200, I think pushing 1,300. But when you have not another 1,000-yard receivers, Juju should get there. But what he's done with this young core has been magnificent. And he's showing why he's the best player in the league. And a lot of people take him for granted, definitely around the world, when they talk about Joe Burrow is better than him. Josh Allen is better than him. And now I remember in the beginning of the year, they said Patrick Mahomes had no weapons. And now people are coming out saying, oh, he's got Juju, he's got MVS. You guys said he was nobody at the beginning of the year. Patrick Mahomes makes these players better, and that's what a true leader is all about. And you just got to really love what he is doing. And that basically caught me when I was like, damn. Like, Juju missed a few games, and yeah, he has over 800 yards, pushing 900. But the next guy up is 600 with MVS. It's like, these guys aren't really, like, going over 1,000 yards. I'm not saying they're not producing, because that basically contradicts everything I said, because year one, they are doing their things, but just to see it all gelling together and see what it can bring in the future is very exciting. And also, when you have number 15 under the helm, you're always going to get good results on this offense. Now, to close this video out, I'm going to focus on the defensive side of the ball, and the defense did some amazing things last week against the Seattle Seahawks. And one thing that caught my eye, and Spags confirmed it today, was L'Jarius Sneed. I caught it, but I wanted to make sure because it was something the Kansas City Chiefs don't normally do. And L'Jarius Sneed actually traveled with DK Metcalf throughout the whole game. And I'm like, finally, Spags, you adjusted. You did something to make this defense better. And at the end of the day, that's what's probably going to keep your job. I know a lot of Chiefs Kingdom aren't still buying that, but if this defense keeps progressing and Spags makes those type of adjustments, and this defense gets better through a playoff push, he's going to be the Kansas City Chiefs defense coordinator unless he retires. But I loved seeing L'Jarius Sneed basically trail with DK Metcalf. I want to see our number one cornerback, whether it be Trent McDuffie, whether it be Sneed, basically go along with the opposing team's wide receiver number one. Now, he said he only did it because Tyler Lockett was out, so he wanted to test something, and he said he might do it more in the future. If he sticks with that, this defense can be really, really good. Like I always mention, you have to put these players in position to succeed. And that was one way to do it. Let these players man up and you hold them responsible. And if they get burned or they allow a play, at least you know. This zone defense crap, I'm not a huge fan of it. I get it, 9 times out of 10, it's a bend but don't break. So you're going to give up the yardage, but at the end of the day, you might not let the team score. But this bend but don't break hasn't really been working for the Kansas City Chiefs. So yes, it was time to adjust, and I'm glad Spags saw it. And it basically led to one of, if not probably the best defensive performances of the year for the Kansas City Chiefs. And it's only time to build on it. And it's going to be one of the key focal points that I'm going to focus on against the Denver Broncos. Again, a lot of you are going to be like, oh, it's the Denver Broncos offense. I told you, don't fall for that or buy that. We literally allowed 28 points against this team. I ain't buying that. And I'm believing this defense won't either, because they got to feel pretty bad that they did that. And also, it's a not new coaching staff, but a new interim coach under the helm, and you know what happens there. There's a fire lit under all their asses where they are extra motivated and they are playing. And I will say it time in and time out. I don't care how many times we beat the Denver Broncos. They will always scare me for the fact we keep kicking their ass. And I know they are tired of it and they will always try to find a way to win. And I'm excited to see this defense keep on building. And now I'm going to be basically watching the matchups. Who's going to be covering Jerry Jeudy? Because Jerry Jeudy went nuts against us. If it's Sneed, let's see if he basically goes whole game with him. And then you have Trent McDuffie on Cortland Sutton all game. Now you got my eyes peeled on the screen, and I'm going to be watching these one-on-one matchups, and I'm going to be seeing if they're going to be with them the all game. And if they are, and if it succeeds, we might have a good defense going in the future, because you also saw early on against the Seahawks too. Basically first half, when the game started getting out of the way, Seattle, they tried to commit to the run, and it was working in the third quarter, but they still weren't successful in scoring points. But the Kansas City Chiefs, they were stopping Ken Walker too. Their defense played phenomenal. They were stopping the run. They were stopping the pass. They were getting pressure on Geno Smith. If they can constantly do this, this might have been the perfect time for this defense to click. We always mention Spags' defense always goes on streaks. Whether it be good streaks or bad streaks, they always tend to go on a run. They haven't had a good run this year. This would be the perfect time to do it, to get in line for a Super Bowl run, and I am so excited to see what they do against Denver, what they do against Las Vegas, and then let's see what we got in this playoff run. But with that, Chiefs Kingdom, I'm going to sign off. Let me know how you feel about my basically rankings on our wide receivers. Let me know what you view and what you feel the Kansas City Chiefs should do. Basically, we all know Juju's wide receiver number 1, but who you would like to see get the majority of the snaps going for wide receiver 2 down into this playoff run, and what you would like to see in this offseason. I ain't trying to focus too much on the offseason because we got a Lombardi to try to get, and also, can we build off this defense? You think it's a positive, or you think it was just a one-hit wonder? With that, I'm checking out. Please be sure to subscribe to the channel. Give me that big thumbs up if you like this video. Y'all take care.